So you're ready to drop seven figures on a lakefront slice of heaven in the Brainerd Lakes area. Before you swipe that card, pause. Because guess what? That 1.8 or $3.2 million dream home could have, shared dock rights, a crumbling septic system, a north-facing deck, neighbors that throw 4th of July parties like it's Daytona Beach and not Gull Lake, and that neighbor that has the freshly flipped luxury cabin from 1992. Yeah, it still has carpet in the bathroom. So before you burn through a million or two and regret every single summer weekend, let's talk about what really matters when buying a lake home in the Brainerd Lakes area. If this is your first time on our channel and you want to know everything about living in the Brainerd Lakes area, subscribe below, tap that bell for notifications so you can be the first to know about the current market right here in the Brainerd Lakes area. My name is Noah Gedker. We get calls, texts, emails all the time for people just like you looking to make their move to the Lakes area, and we absolutely love it. So whether you're moving in 9 days or 9 months, give us a call, shoot us a text, send us an email, or schedule a Zoom call. All the info, again, is in the description box below, and we'd love to help you make a smooth move to the Lakes area. All right, so not all lakefront is created equal. The address might say Gull Lake, but that doesn't mean the experience is Gull Lake or the Whitefish chain for that matter. We need to make sure we ask some questions first. Is it private shoreline, or is it just deeded access, or maybe just a view? So that translation, are you actually buying waterfront property or just that view? The elevation, is it gradual? Is it level? Will you need ropes and carabiners to get to the dock? Is it, a steep incline or decline, depending on your perspective, I guess? Because if you need a tram, that's going to cost you $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 just so you can get down to the dock. That may not be a deal breaker, but it's something you need to be aware of. Then can you dock a pontoon, or are you stuck with just like a kayak or canoe? Then the question is the direction of your view, right? So west facing lots, of course, will have great sunsets. East facing lots would be great for morning sunrises with, hopefully a warm cup of coffee. And then north facing, you'll have light, but you won't have, depending on the orientation slightly, you're not really going to see sunset, sunrise, anything. South facing, you could get sun all day long. That you may like that, you may not like that, actually. So that's just something to be aware of. All right, so here's where it gets a little spicy. Brainerd Lakes luxury pricing in spring of 2025, fairly current stats, primarily discuss the Gull Lake chain and the Whitefish chain, because those are going to be the highest, the most premium prices. Everything else is going to be below that. Entry-level cabin going to be about 600, 700,000 to about 900, 950,000, somewhere in there. Very entry level. Some of those kind of lower on the totem pole there are going to be potentially, depending on your taste and what your plans are, might be potentially teardown types. Then we have the kind of the mid-tier lake home, and those are going to be 1 to 1.8 million. They potentially may be, a fairly nice home, but the shore and access may not be as good. Or vice versa, may have good shoreline, but the house is not good at all, right? Then you have, so that's going to be where most of the homes are going to fall into. It's going to be around 1.5 to 2.5 million. Okay, so that kind of bridges from the mid-tier to the higher end properties, right? So 2 million to 6 million plus. So those are going to be the higher end, with luxury, and up is going to be 3 to 4 and up. And then a lake lot can range anywhere from $3,000 to $11,000 or maybe even $12,000 a front foot, around $300,000 to $1.2 million, depending on, number of variables. Okay. And get this, that $1.4 million cabin, it might still have vinyl windows, questionable septic system, probably, a dirt driveway or a dirt road leading up to it. That's another thing, is that might be a lot of these lake homes, you have to take at least for a little bit of time, take a dirt road to the property potentially. That may be a big factor for you, okay? Pro tip for you, buy for the shoreline and the lot, not the granite counters or things that you can change, right? The flooring, you can change that. You can change from shingles, the roof line, or the, whatever you want to add on, all that kind of stuff you can change up. The shoreline, there's not much you can do about it. So buy for the shoreline. All right, now I want to get into maybe some expenses or costs that aren't always considered, at least early on, when looking for a lake home, right? Things like taxes and insurance and that kind of stuff, right? Pest control. So you're not just buying a house, it's almost like buying a second job, because there's a lot of maintenance and upkeep with these lake homes, right? You can hire things to be done, of course, so you don't have to do them, but there's a cost to that, right? Some of the expenses to think about would be property taxes. Depending on the value of the property, is going to be $8,000 to $22,000 a year or more. Now in Minnesota, you're taxed based off of the value of the property, so it's not like in Wisconsin, or you're going to pay way more in taxes to have a lake home in Wisconsin than here in Minnesota. Homeowners insurance, again, that's going to be very property specific, but figure at least $2,500 to $5,000 a year or more potentially, right? Then dock removal and install each year, anywhere from $600 to maybe $2,000 annually. And that's going to cost a little bit different depending on what type of shoreline you have. If you've got a steep elevation and it's the dock's got to be brought by barge, that's going to cost you more. Then there's well and septic maintenance, right? Probably budget anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000 every 2 to 3 years. Then there's pest control, snow plowing, shoreline erosion, other landscaping type expenses. So a lot of that can be hired out, but or you can do it yourself. If you do it yourself, it's just a lot of that's going to take a lot of time. And if this is your second home, third home, or cabin or vacation home, you just don't have time to do all that, especially the snow plowing. You're probably not going to be up here too much in the winter time when it's 30 below, 40 below. It'll be good to have the snow removed, especially if for some reason, unfortunately, if there were to be a fire, you would want the fire truck to be able to get to your property, right? Luxury lake life, and just any lake life is quite amazing, but there are realities like, a raccoon setting up a timeshare in your soffits, or potentially worse. So you just factor in those, just assume that there's going to be additional expenses that, we should prepare for. All right, moving along here. Another thing to think about is if you can make it a short-term rental, generally in a lot of places you'll be able to. Should you? That's going to depend. Here's what really matters. A city ordinance, so like Cross Lake is going to have pretty tight rules. Breezy Point or Crosby is going to be pretty loose. Other areas where they just defer all the regulations to Crow Wing County. It's going to be a lot easier, a lot more simple to get a short-term rental set up. And then if you, for some reason, are in an HOA, there may be bans on short-term rentals, the complete bans. So a lot of lake homes might have an HOA for like a shared, maybe snow plowing or something like that. But those types of HOAs don't have regulations on short-term rentals. Another thing to think about is the earning potential. Well-marketed homes in the right spots can earn $80,000 to $120,000 a year or better. You better have a cleaner, know what your guest restrictions are. You don't want to make your neighbors angry. Have somebody who can do property maintenance on site, can deal with things locally here. So a quick crash course for higher end buyers from Scottsdale or Denver. There are no security gates really. Privacy comes from distance, pine trees, and silence. You'll see more float planes than Bentleys. And bottle service, that's just Zorba's Pizza and Busch Lights on the boat. You'll want to build? Well, potentially have to wait upwards of 12 to 18 months. And it's generally going to be like $500, upwards to $800 a square foot, even if you can find a good builder. Now, there are plenty of good builders. They're quite booked out. A lot of the best homes are off market. Just helps to know somebody who knows where to find them. That's me. All right, here are some Quick fire tips for lake home buyers. Okay. Always, 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 always walk the shoreline, but in boots or footwear that can potentially get wet or dirty. Don't wear Gucci loafers. Ask about invasive species like zebra mussels, that kind of stuff. Watch where the sun actually sets, where it rises. That matters. Find out if it's deep water or shallow water, and how far out you can go before the water does get deep, if it is shallow at first. If you're buying early in the spring, pull up the county GIS maps and look at overviews to see maybe in the late summer or fall, see what the water foliage kind of looks like. Maybe in the spring, there's no lily pads, it's clean, there's no weeds, but by later in the year, maybe there's a ton of weeds. You know, just got to watch out for that, right? If you're really wanting to avoid that. And then also ask your agent and find out, you know, is it actually private shoreline, right? You don't need people coming to join you at the beach, right? You know, like I think, what is it? Lake Geneva, a lot of properties, Lake Geneva in Wisconsin, there's a public walkway around a big portion of the lake. So you got this public walkway between your home and the shoreline. So that'd be kind of a bummer. So buying a luxury lake home, more like winning the lottery, not like waking up in a timeshare from 1996. If you want the real scoop, straight up advice, and access to homes that you may not find on Zillow, shoot me a text, give me a call, or schedule a Zoom, and subscribe, hit the bell, drop a comment, especially if you've ever bought a sunset view that faced east. But anyways, I'm Noah Gedker. I'll see you at the lake, but only if it's the right shoreline.